Nosferatu. This is from Robert Eggers, a director I'm a big fan of. He did The Witch, The Lighthouse. He did The Northman, which is a really underrated film. I think he was a perfect choice for this, but the movie itself is just kind of dull.
Okay, first of all, I haven't seen any of the films you've just talked about, and I'm sorry to pick you up on it, but you said it incorrectly, James. It's Nosferatu. That's how you actually pronounce it. So, you know, your Irish tongue not getting around the phrasing there. I'm interested in your views on this. I really enjoyed this, I think. I'm not sure. It's hard to gauge. I thought the cinematography was amazing. I thought the camera work was stunning. The sound was stunning. Loved the design of Nosferatu. I thought that was cool. I'm sure we'll get to that in a bit. I thought some of the acting was darn right shite. I've got one person in particular that I want to talk about. But then also, I don't know if I was just a bit bored at times. You know, like I say, hard to decide whether I liked it or not, because would I go back and rewatch this? Probably not.
I might. I'll catch the second half on a Christmas Eve, I'm sure,
exactly.
10 years time.
You'll fast forward through it to the bits that are slightly interesting.
I think there's it's 2 hours and 10-ish, and I think there's probably like 55 minutes of brilliance in this film. Like you said, the cinematography, I love all the callbacks to the original film, like the shadow kind of work. Any shot that was recreated was beautiful. There's obviously a lot of respect for that original film in this. So like as a remake, I think it's fantastic. But it's just Dracula again. Like he didn't, like, there was an opportunity there to inject something new into this.
I disagree. I disagree. I think there are some subtle differences to Bram Stoker's Dracula in this that I liked. I like that you've gone back to the mythology of the vampires. You've gone back to what Bram Stoker based his novel on. So I liked lots of controversy, and I'm sure you want to mention it. Oh my God, he's got a tash. Actually, he should have a tash. Do you know what I mean?
Well, Vlad the Impaler had a tash.
Exactly. You know, I thought it was a much more interesting rendition, I guess, of a vampire. Sucking the blood from the heart, that was different.
It's interesting. I will say that. Like, in terms of like the actual portrayal of Nosferatu, I think whenever he's on screen, it's magic. Like, I thought Bill Skarsgård was just phenomenal. He really disappears into this. I think there was like one shot of the movie where I recognized that it was him, and aside from that,
I didn't get it was him.
Yeah,
I didn't get it was him at all.
Crazy.
In this. At all, yeah.
I like the look. I like, you know, because like obviously not the original Nosferatu, like the Max Schreck version, is probably the most iconic, or like up there with Bela Lugosi, like one of the most iconic like vampire looks ever. There's no point just recreating that. You have to do something new. And like we've seen multiple versions of this in like Salem's Lot, or like there's been Nosferatu remakes in the past. So I'm happy they did something different. I think he looks cool. I think I like he's sort of semi-sexy, but then also like vampires are undead. And I think this leans more into that, where like he's got kind of rotten bits, like there's maggots eating at parts of him and stuff like that, and like you feel that he's a monster. I think that was really cool. It's
interesting because you're right, the look is pretty grotesque. The sucking was horrific. When he was drinking, that's the most horrific version of drinking of blood I think we've seen. The wheezing was really off-putting. But then I was trying to think about it, and yes, the cinematography was great and all that kind of stuff, and that bit was spooky. At any point was I really frightened of Nosferatu? In the castle, yeah, he was creepy and stuff like that. I think for the most part, though, I was just disgusted by him. Do you know what I mean? Revolted by him, rather than scared of him. You know?
That is very much a Robert Eggers thing. He has freakish movies, you know, and there's like some moments in this that really feel like out of his films. Like, for example, the bit where the kind of Renfield character like eats the head off the pigeon. You know, that feels like ripped right out of it. Everything with the Renfield version in this feels like ripped out of that. But like, yeah, it very, very stylish. I never was really scared. I just thought he was cool. So I just liked whatever, you know, and I even think the voice was really cool. Like, I like that they went full on like Transylvanian accent with it. I thought that was awesome.
I think we've become used to seeing the sexy vampire, haven't we? You know, Nicolas Cage. We've seen the slap back hair and all that kind of jazz for a vampire, and we've forgotten how horrific it is. Like you say, it's undead. He should be kind of
he's a walking corpse
and pulsating and, you know, that element of it I liked. I think for me, as we said at the start, 2.5 hours or something, this movie, and it feels like 2.5 hours, if that makes sense.
I do think, like, I didn't really have a problem with any particular cast member in it. I think I've heard people say, and even someone I went with said this, that it felt like watching a play, like some of the scenes in it. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It is this kind of ye old talking, but like with a German twist. So they're saying like her for Mr. and stuff.
Had no problem with the German twists and things like that. I thought Defoe was phenomenal in it. My issue, and I'll get his name wrong because you know what my brain's like, the bloke who's in Craven at the moment.
Aaron Taylor Johnson?
I've seen him in a few films and he's superb in a lot of them. Other films, I think this guy's a shite actor. I really do. So in this, his accent kind of just went all over the place. Sometimes it was like almost like he was on stage doing like a play, and then other times it just was cack. I mean, there's one point where they're in the study or something and he's like shouting at them to get out, and it was the most pathetic Downton Abbey kind of, I say sir, get out of my room, and it was just shite. It just didn't fit with the rest of the performances for me. I don't know, he just irritated us. I'm probably still salty for Craven, I think.
Outside of Orlok, he was my favourite performance in the film. Funny enough, I like the kind of, he went for the really kind of like, oh yes sir, you know, that kind of vibe with it, and I think
that worked at points, and other points it drifted off to just someone putting on a really shit English accent. It was just not good.
Nicholas Hoult as the kind of Jonathan Harker sort of character in this, I thought he was phenomenal. It's funny like seeing him doing that when he's done Renfield in the past. But yeah, I think like the Harker bits where he like when he visits Dracula's castle, it's all very ominous. I like that kind of like they're in the kind of Romani village beforehand in the hostel and he sees the kind of sacrifice thing in the woods. I think that was really cool.
I think that was some of the best stuff in the film for me. I loved the castle bit. You know, the lead up to that was really, really interesting. I loved that element of it, and that was really good.
Yeah, like even that first sequence with Orlok where he's like serving him dinner and he like disappears from one part of the screen and comes onto the other and stuff, like he's teleporting around the room almost, was very cool. So you feel like for that character, I felt. Lily Rose Depp as the kind of Mina Harker character in this. A lot of people in my screen, I could feel the vibe of like what is she doing. Like there's a lot of, she's really goes for it in a lot of scenes in this. Like it's very very kind of sexual, a lot of the kind of like spasming possession sequences, I guess.
Yeah, I was sat next to my daughter, slightly uncomfortable, not gonna lie. I get that they're playing a period piece. I just wasn't blown away by her performance at points. I guess I'm not used to watching that like real old Victorian kind of style of acting. It just didn't gel at times for me. I
thought like strong performance, but I guess that parts of it maybe went too far for some people. But I was kind of in it watching her. Like
I don't know if it wasn't the sexual nature, and I have to say by the end I completely believed her performance when she was laying with the Nosferatu. It was some of the earlier scenes, I just don't know. It not when she was convulsing and all that kind of stuff. That's not when I had a problem. I had a problem when she was just trying to be English. Do you know what I mean? And she was just standing at the beach talking. It was like, oh, this feels so false.
Ralph Ineson as the kind of doctor character. I love this guy.
Love it. Galactus. He's going to be Galactus.
He's Galactus Finchy in the office, so he was a fun addition. I will say, when Willem Dafoe was casting this as like the Van Helsing character, I was absolutely stoked. I felt a little let down in the movie by him. I don't think he does that much. Like he doesn't come into it until like nearly the last fourth of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed his performance, but he's not the standout of the show, is he? And you know, he was there. He acted well in terms of the accent and stuff like that. I thought his was the most authentic, really, other than Nosferatu. I like seeing Nosferatu, if you noticed. I thought he was pretty good in it, but I guess, you know, and I have to be honest, it's a long time since I've seen the original movie. I'm more used to the retellings of Dracula, I guess, now. But I was expecting a little bit more monster and horror. So I've recently watched Bram Stoker's Dracula, and I wasn't overly blown away by it, I have to say. But there are some great scenes in that, when he like turns into the bat creature and he blows flames on the cross, or when he turns from the bats to the rats and all that kind of jazz. We didn't seem to get any of that kind of level of horror in this. Even the guy's wife and kids who died, when he went into the mausoleum, I was thinking, ooh, they're going to raise from the dead and they're going to have to behead them and blah, blah. Nah. No, he just set them on fire. It was like, all right. So I was waiting for, I guess, dare I say it, an action piece or some kind of something to happen. You know,
slow is sort of like the wrong word for it. I feel like it's very like self-reflective, like throughout it. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't go for those big bombastic. Like even my memory of like I listened to the audiobook for Dracula like a few years ago. Van Helsing does show up and they have like a somewhat of a fight or something.
There's definitely a scene where Van Helsing, and like I say, it was the scene where they go to because he finds the brides, doesn't he? I'm sure they go and find some brides and they chop their heads off and stuff like
dogs
that.
Instead, you know? In this.
Yeah, I think for me it was lacking at some point some kind of confrontation other than them just kind of wandering around looking for him and stuff.
Yeah, like pretty much it's only like the Mina and the Harker characters that interact with them even in the entire thing. Like we never get a Willem Dafoe against like even like a stare down or something like that. We get nothing like that. So it's like that was a bit unfortunate, I thought. It's very stylish. I love the visuals of it. I love how it's made. The direction was phenomenal. But I don't know, it's just I was going into this expecting like I was gonna love like 10 out of 10 masterpiece. I was gonna absolutely adore this, and like I just didn't. I liked it, but yeah, it just didn't have that kind of that oomph for me that I was gearing for when I walked in.
I often think, I mean, some of the films you've listed there, Northman, The Lighthouse and stuff like that, I've not watched them, but they feel artsy-fartsy type films to me. I sometimes think that's not my style of film. This was a great movie in terms of the artistic style, the camera work, the music, all that kind of stuff. But did it entertain us? It was okay. If I had to choose between this and rewatching something like Renfield, which isn't artsy-fartsy, but it is entertaining, I'd watch Renfield. Do you know what I mean? I had a better time watching Renfield.
It is interesting because people seem very split on this, and I wonder, like, The Look I know has been very controversial, but I feel like if this was just Dracula instead of Nosferatu, people wouldn't have that issue, like, because we've had various different looking versions of Dracula. Like, having a mustache with Dracula I don't think would be that much of a problem, but because it's Nosferatu, because it's, you know, that iconic look, that's been changed.
Well, I guess for me the tash isn't the issue here. I loved everything about the vampire. Do you know what I mean? I loved all of that aesthetic. I loved the wheeze. I loved the, you know, I thought that was interesting. The issue for me is that I was just a little bit bored at points. And
when he's not on screen, it's just the movie he's missing on.
We've talked before about the length of films and how, you know, you can go into a movie and 2.5 hours pass and you've never felt it. You know, it's flown by. This dragged at points. I could feel, I was there with my wife and my daughter, I could feel them shuffling in their seats. Do you know what I mean? They were getting pretty bored halfway through. And it was like, oh, it's a shame because it's pretty. It is pretty.
Very pretty. When the lights came on in my screening, I'm not going to lie, there was like an aura of, what the fuck was that? Like, I could feel it.
Yeah,
I could feel it. Like, people didn't seem to like it at all.
So interestingly, in our screen, and this is horrible to say, but interestingly in our screen, I became very aware of people leaving. So there were at least 3 couples that I counted after I noticed people were leaving and not coming back. So people might have left before that, who I think went in expecting to see some kind of horror.
Slash the vampire.
Yeah, and got halfway through and just decided to go. I paid attention to see if they were coming back and they weren't. So like I say, at least 3 couples went.
My screening, the 2 people in front of us left a little after the halfway point as well. So interesting. I think, give it a chance. I like it. I'm rooting for it, but like, it's not amazing. I feel a little bit let down by it.
I'm pleased I've seen it, but like a lot of films last year, I feel it was kind of elevated and people told us it was amazing and stuff like that, and I ended up going in thinking it's all right, it's canny, but it's certainly not worthy of some of the accolades I think people have been giving this 10 out of 10, and I'm like, really?
And it's not that. It's not that at all. I feel like I could see why some people, like, I'm even, you know, like, it is very similar to his other films in terms of the style of it and the kind of, like, his other films are slow, but it bothered me more in this one for some reason. I'm not really too sure why. I would say for Bill Skarsgård alone, for the actual Nosferatu character, it's definitely worth checking out.
I would recommend people watch it, but I don't think I'll be going back on. It's not going to be a regular watch. You know, we've reviewed Fright Night. I watch that once a year now. I ain't going to be watching this regularly. I'm getting old. I've got enough life left in us to watch this.
Yeah, you're basically a walking corpse as well, aren't you?
I am.
So that's our review of Nosferatu. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, leave a like and consider hitting subscribe. We review all the latest horror movies in the cinema, and we do I'll Be Right Back, which is our retro review series. We also have One Good Scare live every second Friday. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.